Drawing from the scriptures today, here's a question for you, and you don't have to raise your hand. Is there anyone in your life, now or maybe in the past, who really gets under your skin? Oh, there's some knowing laughter out there, I can tell. Hopefully the person's not sitting next to you or you're going to be in trouble. Anyway, yes, somebody that can irritate us. And that can happen in family life, can't it? I remember more than one person telling me this, something like this, saying, oh, I'm so glad we just see this uncle at Thanksgiving once a year. That's enough, you know? And yeah, there can be conflicts there. Obviously in the workplace, in our volunteer activities, and goodness knows conflict can even happen in the church. And I'm sure you're very surprised about that. As we look at that, we recognize that for each of us, we need to take a deeper look and see what God is saying to us in this whole area of conflict. I want to go back, you know, I often do when I'm reflecting on the scriptures. What's an event in my life that, wow, it kind of speaks to this in a down-to-earth way. The one I'm thinking of was 50 years ago at my parish, St. Barnabas. And at St. Barnabas, back then, they were starting a new spiritual program for adults called Christ Renews His Parish. And I was only like 4 months ordained, and I remember that I was to work with the women's group that were putting this on. And what they did, they found a core group who would be willing to help put it on. And then at the first meeting, they would be prayerful and try to discern the different ministries people would do that had come to this core group. Like, would they be involved in giving a talk, or maybe doing the supplies, working with, or the kitchen, or possibly even being a director of the retreat. And so I think overall it went well. We were being prayerful, okay, kind of asking people to sense what God may be saying to their heart, and then talking about that. Well, we got down to all the other ministries were chosen, but we were still looking for a lay director, a woman to help on that perspective. And there were two people who were still there who could very possibly be that lay director. And we said to be prayerful, and the one woman said, well, you know I didn't pick anything else, but I just don't feel that I'm called to be the lay director. It's just not resonating with me. The other woman said, oh, this is so good. I knew even before I got here that I'm supposed to be the lay director, and that this is going to be good. I have a lot of qualities. I love the Lord. Yeah, I'll be the lay director. Well, the community prayed, trying to listen to what they said, and they picked that woman because she felt so strongly about God's calling her to this, which, okay, that was a good thing. But about 4 or 5 days later, several women from that group came to the parish office to talk to me. And they said, Father, there's no way that woman should be the lay director. She's pushy, she's not sensitive to people. And then this was the key. I'm 4 months the priest. She said, you need to talk to her and say, there's no way she should be the lay director. I'm supposed to do that? Yeah, you can do that, Father. She'll believe you as the priest. You know, I'm not really big into conflict, but we talked a little bit. But then I also thought about it, too. I said, wait a second. You probably do have some legitimate gripes, if several of you are talking about this. Can we possibly give her a chance? Okay, this could possibly be something good that leads her in a positive way, becomes more aware of how she comes across. And I said, you know, there's going to be like several meetings here, and we can talk, and I'll be glad to talk to her one-on-one and see some possibilities for her having greater self-awareness in what she does. And the women were kind of like, it's not going to do any good. You should know what she's like. She's been like this for years, you know. And I said, well, you know, and I'm trying to be nice and loving and kind. And they finally gave in and said, well, okay, but if she keeps that up, you got to let her go. And so, man, I was praying, Lord, I hope she changes. I don't want to I don't want to talk to this lady because she's quite something, you know. But anyway, so over the next few weeks, as we met, and she was the lay director, and I know I would talk to her. We'd have meetings separate because she was a lay director, and talked to her about some things, and brought some stuff up in terms of how she was relating to the other women, and she was pretty open. You know, obviously I didn't try to just slam her about it, but hey, maybe there's some ways you can look at how you can lead even more effectively and more lovingly with this group. And I think over time, over the next few weeks, and then I had said to these women, I said, you know, what you can do, what's most important, you have legitimate concerns, pray for her. Pray that maybe through this, she'll come to that sense of Jesus influencing her to be the way she can be the leader you want her to be. Well, over a few weeks, that really happened. I mean, did she get perfect? No, none of us are. But she was better. And eventually, we had the retreat, and it went very well. And of course, some of those women were shocked. You know, I said, hey, the Lord can work amazingly in different people. After all, this is a retreat where we're coming together with the Lord. And so saw that and the difference that made. And I can remember saying, I'm not sure I want to be the spiritual director of any more retreats. You know, this is supposed to be holy and loving, but it did eventually turn out well. Because the reality is that woman and the other women too were people of faith. And we're at least open to kind of seek to understand one another. And if somebody bothers us, to be able to share it in a loving way, obviously. And hopefully, if any of us are critiqued by somebody else, to be able to take it in a loving way and say, hey, maybe there's something here I need to hear. And she did that. Part of the reason I bring all that up is from the scriptures, obviously, today, and that can speak to all of us. Not only about church life, but family life, and even goodness knows in this political season with so much going on, with which there's so much hostility and hate, there are differences, and certainly we can acknowledge that. But the hate, the hostility, hey, we need to look at that, especially for many who say we're Christian after all. So, I want to show this is an ancient issue because that reading from James, I'm going to read part of it. James was the leader of the community in Jerusalem and was pastoring them. Now he's writing a letter back to them because he's finding out this was early Christianity. These people had just recently, probably within months, come to accept Jesus, come to pray, come to be loving like Jesus, come to be forgiving like Jesus, all of that. And he encouraged them in that. But once he's away for a while, he gets all this stuff. Oh, they're being violent, they're being negative, and that bothers James with his idealism and also with, hey, what's going on here? So he writes a letter back and talks about that. Like it's so often, and we can get like this, and even like those women, we can see the issue is always everybody else. And there may be some legitimate thing about that, but do we also need to look at ourselves? And so James, hearing about all this conflict, says to the whole community, where do the wars and where do the conflicts among you come from? And yeah, where do they come? Well, they come from so-and-so or so-and-so. Is it not from your passions, and what they mean by passion here, from your evil kind of attitudes? Is it not from your passions that make war within your members? In other words, saying, hey, everybody has got to look within themselves and say, yeah, there's something going on in me that I need to name. Still can have a gripe about the other person, but if I'm so hostile, so negative, yeah, I need to look within about that. And then he goes on to say, okay, here's the ideal. That we know we fall short. He says, but the wisdom from above. We need that wisdom from above, don't we? That in prayer, in an inner life, Lord, speak to me, influence me. The wisdom from above is first of all pure, then peaceable, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruit. Yeah. In any situation, we need to be able to look at that and recognize, yeah, Lord, I need to be more aware, and help me to be more aware. Again, can have concern for other people. I can't necessarily always do something about them, but I can do something about me in the midst of this and not become hostile back. Then we see in the gospel, again, Jesus is with his disciples. They've been formed over a 3-year period. And he's talking to them, and at this time, he's being real vulnerable. He's saying to them, you know what? I need to tell you this. We're going to Jerusalem, and I'm going to suffer, be rejected, be crucified. And obviously, the disciples, you'd think, had to be very touched by that. And a legitimate response might have been as they were walking. Remember, Jesus asked, what are you talking about on the road? Well, Jesus probably hoped they'd be talking about, hey, how do we help the Lord? How do we encourage him? How can we be a support for him? Look at all he's done for us. And Jesus might have thought, maybe that's what they're talking about. No. Right after he's being that vulnerable and everything, they're talking about who's going to be the most important. Who matters the most? Who's the leader of us? They're so, each of them, preoccupied with self rather than even being attentive to the Lord and what they can be and do for one another. And so they confess that to him, who's most important. And here again, he could have been reactionary in a legitimate point. He could have scolded, I can't believe it. I just told you I'm going to die and you're wrapped up in yourself. That's awful. I'm sure he had those feelings, but here again, he was looking, how can one more time, how can I reach these followers of mine? How can I touch them in here that maybe they'll understand how we're supposed to respond to these in the best way? So what does he do? He uses an example. He doesn't yell. He uses an example. He calls forth a child. In Jesus' day, children in that culture were not considered that important. They didn't have that much to offer, so they were unimportant. He called, and the disciples are worried about who's most important after all. And he calls up a child, brings the child in, and basically embraces the child in a caring way and says, hey, he who welcomes this child welcomes me. That's what it's all about. Reaching out to the people who maybe can't give anything back to us. But this is who you're called to be. And this is what you're called to be about. And he makes that point, if you want to be the leader, this is good for us today, then be willing to be the servant of all. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. And recognize that and follow that attitude. So he does. And one more quick time with what Jesus showed this. Remember when he's crucified and the disciples basically aren't there, they're holding on to their own skin. Then he is raised from the dead. The first time Jesus sees them is that Easter Sunday night after he's resurrected. Comes to the room, and you probably remember that. He came there, and first time seeing them. And I'm sure they thought, oh my gosh, he's going to really give it to us. They were feeling guilt-ridden and fearful, because they had abandoned him. But Jesus' first response was this. He said, peace be with you. Right away, he said, this is what I want for you. I'm not going to, put you down. You already know what you need to know. But I want you to know peace, the kind of peace, inner strength that they and all of us that can deal with any situation that's going on in our lives. And not let the issue of somebody else, maybe their negativity, hostility, not turn around and then us become negative and hostile. We got to be centered in the Lord within to say, help me through all of this, to continue to be influenced not so much by how other people react to me, but Lord, help me to be influenced by you and your spirit in my life, that I can respond to them with your love, your peace, your guidance, your understanding. Take a quiet moment to reflect. Is there something there you needed to hear about that? And then I'm going to have one brief announcement about something upcoming. But yeah, go within and see if the Lord is speaking to your heart. And I do want to mention, we touched on it last week, there's canary yellow cards in your pews. If there's one around you may want to look at it. And again, this is about an upcoming series, 5 sessions, and they're listed here. And again, this is the American bishops. The American bishops have emphasized today that as Catholic Christians, we need to be a witness to a culture that is becoming too divided, too hostile, too hateful. You know, us versus them. And basically, what they're encouraging us, this is a series that they have developed along with some other resources. And it's called Many Voices, One Spirit. And you can see in there the sessions. And then let me just read briefly again what the response is. And these are going to be 5 sessions over Thursday evenings with a meal to start October 10th. And you can see here and in the bulletin more details. But he says this: Many Voices, One Spirit invites us to talk about and then put into action new skills and practices intended to build bridges with people who do not see things as we do. This comes as a response to Pope Francis' invitation to commit to seeking the truth, building bridges, and finding solutions together that promote the common good. So look at that. Maybe you'll even want to even get your name or email and put it in the collection basket today. You'll be hearing more about it. You can take one, or you can also, when you look in the bulletin, see what that says about us doing it. But I can tell you this is an excellent series. Obviously, not only responding to the political climate, but hey, in personal life and work life, in church life, even the inner conflicts we have with ourselves. This can be a real good resource for how our faith, in a powerful way, can make a difference. Take now another quiet moment before we proclaim that faith of ours.